That's all good. Okay, so I'll see you on the other side. Here comes the music, and then the program proper will start.
No worries. Let's roll.
Welcome to another episode of the Good Listening To Show. Sometimes with me, Chris Grimes, the storytelling show that features The Clearing, where all good questions come to get asked and all good stories come to be told. And where all my guests have two things in common. They're all creative individuals and all with an interesting story to tell. There are some lovely storytelling metaphors. A clearing, a tree, a juicy storytelling exercise called 3, 2, 1, some alchemy, some gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. So it's all to play for. So yes, welcome to the Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin. Oh, yes, indeedy doody. And ladies and Genminiminminmin, this is very, very exciting because I've managed to snag in my Zoom hole. By the way, the programme's not called that, but it's Your Life and Times with me, Chris Grimes. And this is the mountaineering legend that is Rolfe Oostra, which I think is a Dutch name. I've done some research. I know it's a Dutch name. But you're Australian. And you've just you're dialing in from Kathmandu on the way back from the climbing passport office because you're about to ascend somewhere epic as usual, which I think is your life. So welcome to the clearing of the Good Listening To Show, mountaineering legend and the pioneer of so many extraordinary gnarly adventures, and 360degreeexpeditions.com is your company. So welcome, Rolfe.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. And like as you just mentioned, it's quite fortunate that we can be chatting here, and it's an absolute pleasure. At this moment, I'm in Kathmandu, and I sent you a photo of what traffic is like today. And yeah, it's getting out of the city is often more of an adventure than climbing the mountains, but I'm glad we had some time to have a chat.
Wonderful. And we're on Facebook together. We've got a couple of connections in common, which is the lovely man Dave Stewart from Fresh Air Leadership, and then Joe Bradshaw, who's one of your guides within 360expeditions.com, I know. Also, You've got an extraordinary history and connection with Joe, because I know that you were both there, Everest, Base Camp 1, when the avalanche happened in 2015. Mm-hmm. And then incredibly bravely, and by the way, the closest I'll get to ascending Everest is the fact that I'm wearing my North Face Fleece. Thank you very much indeed. But you went back very, very, in my framing of it, incredibly bravely the year after to conquer the summit. And,
yeah, that's right.
And it probably wasn't for you. Was that? I'm assuming that wasn't your first ascent of Everest.
No, in all, I've been on Everest 4 times. Twice from the north side, from Tibet, and twice from the south side with Joe.
Now the crux of the Zoom, you just froze for a minute, but you're back. That's good.
Yeah, so in 2015 we had the earthquake hit Nepal. And it was quite catastrophic, not just for us as an expedition, but also for the people here in Kathmandu. There were around 10,000 people killed in Kathmandu, and then we came back off the mountain, and Joe talked to her sponsors, and they said, okay, they were willing to sponsor her for the following year. So we came back in 2016, and then we summited.
Yes, wow. Also, I was really enjoying researching you. The main reason, apart from being on Facebook together, I got in touch. There was just such a brilliantly random photograph, for real, of you at your home in the Pyrenees with, and the picture wasn't of you. It was actually an iguana and a cat just hanging out together as you do on a sofa. And I thought, this is a guy I need to talk to.
That's funny. It's just before I left. The last of our pets sadly passed away. She was a dog called Nilu, but over the years we've had a whole zoo worth of animals, and iguanas and you name it. So the whole zoo passed away. So for every one of our pets who've passed away. We've made a little tombstone and a little graveyard. So we just put the last one under the ground.
And you said
so now.
You said a whole zoo, an iguana, and then you stopped there. I've heard dog, iguana, and cat, but as your menagerie has obviously been quite eclectic, what other things do you just have hanging around in your menagerie?
Well, lots of hamsters and all the little rodent type stuff, and a turtle, and so yeah, it's been quite exotic. My son wanted to buy some snakes, but we stopped there and we said, okay, you buy an iguana instead.
That's a great sort of supplemental. Yeah, I don't want a snake. Let's get an iguana. I love that.
See,
by the way,
and,
that appeals to my sense of humour beautifully. So wonderful. So yes, just to blow a tiny bit more smoke at you, I know that you're Australian and you started climbing. I saw an extraordinary sort of montage video of you where your story is that you began climbing at the age of 14 in Australia, and you've sort of never stopped since, and you've done some pretty gnarly stuff. Congo, Kenya, you've been globally renowned for being and by the way, our connection to Dave Stewart, he describes you as being as hard as nails in terms of your ability to not least be there, be present, but also you rescued Dave by helicopter to help him when he had high altitude sickness by helicopter. So there's been some extraordinary stuff, and the avalanche, so you've had some extraordinarily gnarly experiences.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's I started early to caught the adventure bug. When I was 14, I emigrated from Australia when I was maybe 8 years old with my folks, and from Holland. You were right about the Dutch connection there. And my parents were so keen to explore Australia and to see every nook and cranny, and they dragged us along. So we got the ball rolling through them, and they were very encouraging in our pursuits of kind of exploring wild places from an early age. So yeah, I started rock climbing when I was 14. I did my first alpine season in New Zealand when I was 18. And then I was kind of got my professional qualifications along the line, and I don't know any difference, but I haven't really stopped at mountaineering. It's also been a lot of jungle stuff. I've explored a lot in the Congo, and I've explored a lot in the Amazon and desert stuff. And currently, I'm involved in a lot of work in the polar regions like Antarctica and Greenland. So it's a pretty wild kind of wide-ranging set of adventures that I'm involved in.
And by the way, I was recently lucky enough to interview Alistair Fothergill, who's the main BBC producer and independent film producer for most of the global stuff, the most epic programs about the planet. And so, some of the regions you're describing, I know that there have been film documentaries about them too. So these are the outer reaches of most people's experience of the planet. So
yeah,
again,
and it's part of the job. It's a lot of people focus on things that are well known, like climbing Kilimanjaro, or doing a quest called the Seven Summits. That's to climb the highest mountain in each of the continents, and then there's a very select and a very small amount of people who think a little bit more radically, and they want to go to unknown places, like paddle unknown rivers in the Amazon, or cross sections of deserts in the Sahara that have never been crossed, or climb mountains that have never been climbed before. And for myself, I'm now starting to focus more and more on that element of adventure.
So I'm really, really intrigued to get you now going on the open road of, first and foremost, in a moment, when I just describe what we're going to be doing, I'm intrigued to know in all the intrepid places you've been, where a clearing will be for you. So we'll find that out in a moment. So this is the Good Listening To podcast, Your Life and Times with me, Chris Grimes. We're going to talk about a clearing, a tree. There'll be a tree to shake, where your storytelling apples fall out, alchemy gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, a squirrel, and a cake. Hurrah! So it's all to play for. So let's get you on the open road. I forgot to ask you, by the way, you've just come back from your passport office for where you're going next. Where are you about to go?
What we're doing now is, because it's still, unfortunately, Nepal is still locked in a COVID scenario, and we usually at this time of the year we have around maybe 250 climbers and trekkers coming with us. 360 expeditions to Nepal, and this time I only have one client.
Wow.
So it's really I mean, it's just a small reflection of the impact that COVID's had on tourism. We're a relatively small company, but basically Nepal is still on the red list, and so it's coming back into your home country is usually quite problematic. And so I've got one person, and which I count myself lucky about, because having only a singular client allows you kind of like to play a little bit more. And this time we're trying to do what's called the 3-peak challenge. And that's to climb 3 of Nepal's 6,000 meter mountains in one continuous journey. And usually people come here to climb 1, but we want to try and do 3. And that also involves crossing some super high passes. Like the highest pass we have to cross is about the same height as Kilimanjaro. So it's a kind of like quite epic. We don't have any rest days. It's just go from starting at 4 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning.
You're a hard taskmaster, tough as nails, as we've described. And is it a man or a woman you're going with?
It's a guy. It's a young boy. He's young. He's like, in comparison to me, he's 19 years old, and so he's going to join the Royal Marines next March.
Wow!
And so before he joined the Royal Marines, he wants to do some real adventure. And so he said, okay, let's do this. And what can I suggest? So we came up with multiple ideas for him, and the one I just described really appealed to him.
And how fantastic experience for him, if I may, a future legend following an established legend for some one-on-one rather than being in a squad of 250. I'm assuming that's going to be incredibly, memorable for both of you. So, wow.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, and it's a great opportunity for us to see Nepal how it would have been in the 1950s, because we've just returned from Kathmandu city, like the center of town, and there is no tourists anywhere. And normally when you this time of the year to trek to Mount Basecamp, for example, which is popular, one of the most trek routes in the whole world, you have around 50 to 70,000 people just on walking to Everest Base Camp this year, and at this time of the year, and now there's nobody. So yeah, it's quite lucky. I keep pinching myself that, wow, we're now in Kathmandu in the busiest time of the year, and there's no tourists, and the shops closed down. A lot of things are boarded up. And I think that will be what we're going to look at tomorrow when we enter into a town called Lukla, and we start our walk into the base camp of the first mountain. We're going to see a lot of it'll be very reminiscent of what it would have been like in the 1950s when Edmund Hillary was here.
Wow! So you're taking a journey back in time as well. That's very profound, and as you say, a deep privilege for both of you, and much deserved. I'm sure the pandemic must have hit you hard because of the nature of how people couldn't.
Yeah, it's really affected Nepal. No, it's getting tough for the local people here.
It's a real privilege to have you here, Rolfe, so thank you very much. Let's get you going on the construct of the good listening to. So let's get there. What is a clearing like for you, Rolfe Oostra, mountaineering legend? Where do you go to get clutter-free, inspirational and able to think?
Well, I've been very fortunate to travel since I was a young kid, and I've traveled a lot of places in the world, but I find my inspiration in landscape, and I find my inspiration in scenery, and with like looking at something that's untouched or unclimbed, or the vastness It just kind of throws a question at me as to, is it possible? Is it possible? Could we do this? Can we do this?
And if I may, by the way, sorry to interrupt you, that's great. We need now, because you've just given us a sort of chocolate box of different possibilities, I'm going to try and get you to be specific about a clearing that you'd like to name where I can turn up with a tree.
Okay, it's for me, the thing that really ticks my boxes is the Karakora Mountains of Pakistan. There is simply no landscape on Earth that matches that. And yeah, it certainly has all the well-known peaks like K2 and Broad Peak, but the whole area, the people, the landscape, and the culture and the religion, it's an all-encompassing, super inspirational and super, it's the essence of adventure for me.
So if I may, is it the Karakora mountain range in Pakistan? Is that what you said?
Yeah. The Karakoram.
Karakoram.
Mm-hmm.
I'm goosebumpy with the fact you're the first person to have named that as your clearing. Okay, so if I may, I'm going to arrive with a tree now in your clearing to shake your tree to find out what storytelling apples are going to come out. So this is where you've taken the time. Thank you for preparing on your route map to where you're going now. You've done it in the last just 2 days since we agreed to do this. This is now where you're going to talk about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention, and because of your own love of your own menagerie, this is the moment borrowed from the film Up when it's a bit, squirrels, what never fails to distract you, could be an iguana, or grab your attention, and then a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know until you tell us. So,
okay,
how would you like to interpret that? 4 things that have shaped you.
Well, obviously, I'd have to start with my parents, who dragged me along to every nook and cranny of Australia when I was a child. I've been lucky enough to have some very inspirational climbing mentors, and they were, when I was in my teenage years, they were in their 50s and their 60s, but they were happy to tuck me under their wing. One was an Italian guy called Armando Convini. He was a very good alpinist, and I said, okay, you come along with me and let's have some adventures. And then friends, for sure. It's always good to have like-minded people, and lucky enough to find people who want to commit to these kind of adventures where, in reality, you might not even come back from. And so yeah, I would say parents and mentors and friends. That's the 4 things that have shaped me. And then the 4th one would have to be just to get the ball started and not to have followed what people would consider a mainstream career or a path where you go to university and then find a career, etc., but basically to jump in feet first and to say, okay, I really want to climb, I really want to see mountains, and I really want to kind of have some wild adventures, and damn the consequences. That kind of thinking. So that's kind of all those the combination of all these kind of things have kind of like shaped me as to the person you're talking to now.
And by the way, there was a lovely undercurrent there where I did absolutely hear you say the danger is that you may not come back. And I know that in the facts of being sort of on the cutting edge of mountaineering, I know that there is a sort of tragedy underpinning that, because I know that you've lost personally lots of associates, friends, colleagues over the years in the very dangerous world that you call your home, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right, and it's it's not just mountains. It's also like taking on rivers and taking on in the Amazon or Congo, and hard travel, desert crossings, polar stuff. All these environments have an element of danger. So depending on what kind of project you're going to be doing and what you're thinking of achieving, certainly some adventures have a higher risk factor than others, that's for sure.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And now 3 things that have inspired you or inspire you. The first thing that inspires me now and is to
I mean, I'm really inspired by people who are doing the real deal adventures at the moment. And I don't mean, I don't, not so much the people who are ticking the 7 summits or that kind of stuff, but the really unknown people, you know, folk who are trying to do super unusual things, like, you know, try to climb K2 by a new route in winter, all that kind of stuff that is really pushing the notion of what it's like to be a human being. You know, people have their perceived comfort zone, but these guys and girls are like pushing that edge and further, and they really show what a human being is capable of, not only physically but also mentally.
Lovely.
Who are doing that. That's a huge inspiration for me. And like I said, like the mountains inspire me over and over again. Just to be back, every time I'm away from the world, surrounded by the tranquility of the mountains and the peace they bring. That's hugely inspirational. I find it, okay, I could be myself again, and you know, this is where I need to be, and you know, to find myself. And yeah, like I said, you know, I find a lot of inspiration in my friends, and you know, for their continuous quest to also live this kind of lifestyle. And practically all my friends are adventuring, and you know, nobody's getting younger, but we're still kind of like, okay, having some fun occasionally.
And I'm hearing in your sort of makeup and DNA, if you like, a bit of a wilderness calling. So that's really wonderful. And again, it's really exciting that you're going into sort of 1950s back in time with just one person to do a guide through. It's really exciting that you're about to do that. Lovely. So now two things that never fail to grab your attention.
Oh, okay. Just touching on the on those people that I've mentioned, the people who, the unknowns of the world, who are not part of the social media circus, for example, who work below the radar, and who you know, do things for themselves, and they never fail to grab my attention. It's like, for example, whilst there was a lot of stuff in the press about the Everest season, there was this girl, I think she was 21 or 22, she was Argentinian, and she climbed this super remote, dangerous mountain in Patagonia by herself. And this girl is, what she did and what she accomplished is incredible, you know. But so she's totally below the radar. Nobody's ever heard of her. She doesn't care to be mentioned by any. She's not doing that for Facebook likes, for example. So she's there just doing it for her own thing, and that really grabbed my attention. I'm thinking, you know what, you're touching on the purest essence of what it is to be an adventurer. You know, you're not doing it for anything else except for your own sense of wanting to know more about yourself, wanting to see what's over the next horizon, and wanting to see what the limit is. And that really grabbed my attention, that snippet of news.
And what's her name, by the way, this Argentinian humility legend?
Oh, her name is Lucinda. I don't know her last name. I think it's Demuri or something like this. But
she's so humble. She goes just by her first name, but she conquers the most extraordinary face.
She works by herself. I just heard her on the like the grapevine that, oh wow, this girl is out there and she's just accomplished this. And you know, whilst the world's attention is focused on people who are paying lots of money to climb Mount Everest, this girl said, okay, I'm going to do this. And then a similar adventure, another lady, Swedish, a girl this time, she circumnavigated a big stretch of the Greenland coast in a sea kayak by herself, you know, and just to come up with that concept, you know, to be dropped off by a helicopter somewhere, throw your kayak in the water, you're surrounded by bears and icebergs, and just to start solo paddling around the coast of Greenland by yourself. It's that kind of stuff, once again, unheard of, and she didn't want to be recognized, she didn't want to be mentioned, and I could mention her name, but she'd give me a pretty hard time if I did.
Oh, so you're not. I love that. I was going to ask for her name, but are you saying that she's so under the radar that she doesn't want to be on the radar? The queen, the title there.
Yes, yeah, that is. I mean, she'd be like, you really kind of like, yeah. So I'll keep that one secret.
The unknown adventurer. I love the idea of the lovely. It's not narcissistic in intent. It's totally altruistic, and there's humility in it.
Absolutely, and that really grabs my attention. That there's still people that are doing that. Who have no other motive except to see, okay, and they're trying on some really tough projects. It's like, okay, you're committing to a climbing or project, or like a sea kayaking project that, okay, you probably might not even come back from. It's not a probable, but there's a chance that things are going to go wrong, and because you're so isolated and you're so unreachable, getting help to you is going to be a difficult thing. But still they're willing to commit to that, and that there's still people who have concepts in their head, who still have those ideas in their head, like, wow, I want to do this, and that's really grabbing my attention. And that kind of stuff rocks my boat far more than say if somebody said to me I've climbed Mount Everest, because that there's a whole network and support around getting somebody to the top of Everest.
Yes. It's a bit like, the irony in, join the queue, because there literally is sometimes a queue.
Sometimes, Richie, that's what it is. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful answers, by the way. You're still listening to Rolfe Oostra. You are being a legend to me. I'm really enjoying this conversation. Now, a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know until you tell us.
Well, it's a tough one. I mean, the thing is, it's like most of the stuff I've written about, most of the stuff people have discovered about me already. I'm a pretty transparent person. I'm pretty open. But yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult one to kind of answer.
So yeah, I'll just nudge you kind of up. So anything occurring, because even saying that I'm transparent is a quirky fact. It's good. So you've answered it, but I'll just pause as you think.
Yeah, it's basically, what you see is what you get, and a lot of time folk are a little bit uncertain about my style. All expedition leaders have their own distinct style. All mountain guides have their own distinct style of doing things, and so a lot of folk find me pretty rough and ready to begin with, and some of the things that unconsciously come out of my mouth occasionally kind of like put people on the back foot a little bit, but once they get to know me, they get the idea where I'm coming from, and no harm intended, and then they see, okay, look, you know what, this guy's, he is what he is.
I am what I am, he is what he is, what you see is what you get. Lovely. We have shaken your tree, sir. So now what we're going to do is stay within the clearing in the delicious mountainscape. Just tell us the name of the Pakistani mountain range again.
Okay, the mountains in Pakistan that really do it for me are the Karakoram.
So here we are. Yes. So sorry, I needed to remember that lovely word. So there we are in this mountain range, staying in your clearing, moving away from the tree. Now we're going to talk about alchemy and gold. And by the way, rest assured, you've been giving me this by the bucket load so far. But when you are at purpose and in flow, Rolfe Oostra, what are you happiest doing?
I'm happiest taking a group of people who have never touched on the rawness and the realness of adventure, and to try to achieve their lifelong ambition or their most secret dreams. And that is what for many years I was doing it for myself, but now working as a professional guide and expedition leader, it's the I guess you could say that the kind of self-drive is kind of much reduced, and now I'm much more getting job satisfaction and thrills out of doing it for somebody else, and seeing that smile when they hit that summit, or achieving something they never thought possible,
And by the way, it must be a smile like no other, because it's a totally unique experience that generates that smile.
It is, absolutely. And it's the thing about impossible dreams, about fulfilling things that, I had a client along on a mountain in Peru. And so the first time she read about this mountain, a strange name called Huascaran, was in National Geographic when she was like 8 years old. And it was like, she was reading this thing, and she got transfixed about this strange mountain and a strange name in the Andes she'd never heard about in Peru and everything else. But she said that article always stuck with her about the Andes. And then she came across more stories about this, and she traveled to Peru, and then she saw the mountain, and she never thought she could climb it, and then we managed to climb it like when she was 35 or 38, something like that. And then we got to the top, and fantastic, and she was just like, say, since she was 30 years, she'd been dreaming about this and thinking about this strange mountain, and let alone touching it and climbing it was something she'd never imagined she could do or be capable of. And, that's just one example of many. Joe, for example, we talked about Joe Bradshaw. Also, we first met each other on a trip to Everest Base Camp, and she was working just a city job, and she hadn't trekked anywhere or done anything much before. And there was something about Joe, and I said to Joe, one day we'll get to the top of that thing, and that's pretty far out when you kind of like have never done anything, and you're looking at the highest mountain in the world, and you're thinking, wow, but you know what? I knew that one day we could do that, and that she would be capable of doing that, so we started employing her as one of our trekking guides, and she was my client on a lot of expeditions to prepare for the summit of Mount Everest. And it wasn't a dream that was just a flippant thing. It was literally, okay, now we thought about it, we'll commit and let's go, and I think 8 or 10 years after that initial thing of like, okay, we're going to do that one day, we stood on the top of the world.
And for you, that wasn't your first time, but you just enabled her to make it her first time. Is that right?
It was my third expedition to Mount Everest, but it was my first time on the summit too.
Wow. So you shared the vision and the dream together, which is just lovely to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
By the way, that whole part of this conversation we're having was giving me goosebumps. When you listen to it again, what you said is your sort of vision statement and your reason for being, almost in terms of your purpose and your alchemy in gold, was absolutely that. You've just turned alchemy into gold in what you've just answered. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, and now, finally, then, in the journey of this, there's a final storytelling metaphor, which is where I'm going to award you with a cake, Rolfe Oostra, which is the cherry on the cake of the conversation. So I'll explain more in a moment, but do you like cake, sir?
I like cake, sure.
So you can choose a cake flavour. What you want to go for?
I like cheesecake.
Go you. So are we talking New York cheesecake or just any cheesecake?
Well, any cheesecake. You surprised me, sir.
Okay, so, and by the way, to disappoint you, I'm not actually going to give you a cake. It's a final storytelling metaphor, but we'll base it around your cheesecake. And it's a multi-layered cheesecake, if I may, because this is the cherry on the cake of the conversation. So this is now where I'm going to invite you to answer stuff like, what's the favourite inspirational quote of yours that's always given you succor and pulled you towards your future? It might be, what advice or notes might you offer or proffer to a younger version of yourself? And then what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? And then also, as it's a multi-layered cake, and I'll help you through this if I'm confusing you, but it is multi-textured, because of Shakespeare and the very seminal All the World's a Stage, 7 Ages of Man speech, All the World's a Stage and all the men and women merely players, when all is said and done, I'd like to talk about legacy and how when all is said and done, Rolfe Oostra, how you'd most like to be remembered. So it's a deliberate multi-layered cake where it's just open to you to talk about the legacy of our conversation together.
Okay. I've
No, you're
just
back.
okay.
I'm
The
happy not to have
battery.
lost you at that point.
Okay, I'm ready to go. I've got 10% left on my battery.
That'll be enough. I think this
I think
journey
that should
together
be
is
enough.
perfectly timed so far.
Okay, we're going good. Let's go.
So, what would you like to answer first?
Well, the quote, and it's the quote that um, that really springs to mind. Is quite an unusual one, and it's from a mountaineer called Joe Simpson, who wrote an epic book called "Touching the Void" about his accident in the mountains in Peru. His climbing partner cut the rope, and it's a well-known story. But as he was crawled out of the crevasse he fell into, and he made his way down the glacier by himself with broken legs, he started getting delusional, and he had all this kind of strange visions and all this kind of stuff. His body was really deeply stressed, and he had this soundtrack of Boney M going through his head, and it was "Brown Girl in the Ring, Brown Girl in the Ring, Brown Girl in the Ring," and over again. And his quote was, "I'll be stuffed if I'm going to die listening to Boney M," and that was his motivation to continue living, and so for me that struck a real chord, because I've had many Boney M moments, and for example, I was on Everest in 2019, where I was involved in a rescue, but I ran out of oxygen and I went unconscious, and I found myself having taken a long fall. And when I regained consciousness, I was just below the summit of Mount Everest. I quickly started to appreciate what was kicking off and what was happening. And my thought was this brown girl in the ring moment. And I thought to myself, it's not going to end this way, And so that Joe Simpson quote has always come back in various shapes and forms in my life, that this is not how it's going to end.
Lovely. And did that actual song start playing in your head as a loop at that point?
No, it wasn't that. But it was literally that was a very similar moment where you kind of think to yourself, it's not going to finish like this. And so for Joe, it wasn't going to finish with Brown Girl in the Ring, and for me, it wasn't going to be hanging upside down unconscious on Mount Everest. So that quote has always stuck with me. And the second layer of your cake, just remind me, so the order of things. What was the second layer?
Sorry, it's confusing. It's what advice might you proffer to a younger version of yourself?
Sure. If I could travel back in time, I would definitely say, maybe be less kind of like in a hurry. Take it more easy and learn things properly. That would be, and that's the advice I give to a lot of people now who want to get into mountaineering, who want to get into adventuring, for example. It's easy to see a YouTube kind of video and want to be there, want to be in that moment and be high-fiving on top of a summit. But what it takes to get there is experience, and that takes time to develop. And so you need to walk before you run, and not be in a hurry, and to learn your skills and all the things that are necessary to climb a mountain, to paddle a river, to walk across a stretch of desert. You need to learn all those things instinctively, and not be in a rush.
Wonderful.
High-fiving on top of a hill.
Yeah, and by the way, it hasn't escaped me or our listeners, I'm sure, that you're almost taking a younger version of yourself, the 19 version of yourself, on your trip now. So I'm pretty sure. That's very true. So just be aware that you're going to be able to share such extraordinary wisdom in your intimacy together, which is just wow.
This is literally what's happening, and so he's seen the mountains on YouTube, and he's seen how spectacular they are. And he's like, okay, you know, he's frothing at the bit, and I could see him tugging at the reins, you know. But you know, this older version is going to kind of like slow him down a little bit and say, okay, yeah, first steps first, and we're going to we're going to do all the things that I didn't do when I was your age.
And what's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given personally? Now we're talking about mentorship.
The advice that I was given is pretty well along the same lines, and not the advice I was given is that, for example, if I'm in a guiding role or in an expedition role, then it's not about the summit for me. You know, it's about the summit for making the summit happen for the people I'm guiding. And it's not about standing on the summit myself. And you know, often I'd come to mountains that haven't climbed before, or new project I haven't done before, and I would say, wow, focus, wow. But now it's just like, okay, look at the bigger picture, and look at how you can best create a chance and an environment for the people who you're with to get to the summit. And that's the
and by the way, something that I think Joe Bradshaw might have even learnt from you is the idea of doing the mountain guiding from the back rather from the front, because
absolutely.
And I've heard that story from her.
If you're walking up the front, and if you're leading from the front, you're walking away from your group, and you can't see what's happening behind you. And if you're walking behind, then people can fall back if they have a problem, and they can come and talk to you. Plus, it allows you to see what's going on ahead of you. And there is no clients ahead of you if you're walking from the front, if you're leading from the front, and you can't see anything. All you can see is the summit, but you can't see the people you're with. You're supposed to be in charge of.
By the way, that is such a wonderful portrayal of your leadership, which is fantastic, because I work in corporate communication and leadership quite a lot, and I cite yours, Joe's, and Dave Stewart uses the same story from Fresh Air Leadership, actually. Wonderful advice, really sage-like. So now legacy, when all is said and done, and you've said that there is always the slight frisson of danger that you may not come back. Obviously, I sincerely assume and hope and know that you will come back from this one, because it's a new expedition. But how would you most like to be remembered, Rolfe Oostra?
As a genuine person, it's and certainly I'm flawed in many ways, and of course, no human being is, but that I was there for people, and that I always gave my utmost for to the people who were in my trust to fulfill their dreams, and summit or not, have had a great adventure in the meantime, and to come back and learn something, and to have had a great fun at the same time, and to be remembered for somebody who played every card to allow that to happen, and who did the best for people.
And by the way, what I heard there was, I am human and I will hold your trust. And I just love that. That's wonderful. What a privilege talking to you. So just to bring it to a close now, and we've still got enough time to do this really gently, as this is your moment in the sunshine on the summit of this conversation, as we're putting the cherry on your cheesecake together, is there anything else you'd like to say about being here?
I'd love talking to you, Chris. I like the way you ask your questions, and the whole concept of how your show works, and I think how you operate is a very human way of doing things, and obviously you have a huge following, and just to be part of that and to say my piece is really appreciated, and I'm very thankful for that.
You're very welcome. And by the way, your moment in the sunshine there, thank you for being so generous in that moment. It was more about you, but that was really touching that you said that. Thank you. I really sincerely appreciate that. Where can we find out more about you and 360 expeditions online?
Yeah, it's look up 360 expeditions. We're on all the social media platforms. I'm on my own also social media 360. I'm sorry, it's Rolfe at 360 expeditions on Facebook and Twitter, and
Oh,
As you might have guessed, I don't really have a lot of time for this too much. I put up the occasional Facebook post and Instagram stuff, but most of the time I'm out and about. And
by the way, your autoresponder on your email was lovely. When I sent you email of this Zoom link, I got an autorespond saying, "Hopefully, I'm out mountaineering somewhere," and indeed you are. Also, thank you so much. I did have a quick conversation with Jo Bradshaw, who's obviously a great admirer and colleague of yours, and she said, "Oh, blimey, that's a bit of a coup. He doesn't often do this, so I'm very, very happy that you've spoken to me. Thank you."
Thanks a lot, Chris. I really love being part of your program, and I really appreciate you giving me a chance to, have my say. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I wish you all the luck and no bony M tracks, please, in the head as you go off on your next expedition. And just say for a third time, I love the rule of three and reincorporation. Forgive me, because I've not heard of the mountain range before. Just say where your clearing is again. It's the Pakistani mountain range of...
It's the Karakoram. Karakoram.
I just want to leave that hanging there. So you've been listening to Your Life and Times with me, Chris Grimes. This has been the mountaineering legend Rolfe Oostra. This is on Buzzsprout, this programme where the main podcast is hosted. I do it as LinkedIn Lives, Facebook Lives as well. And then it's also got its own weekly show on UK Health Radio as well. So you've been listening to me, Chris Grimes. This has been Rolfe Oostra. Thank you for watching if you have been on Facebook Live too. Thank you very much indeed. And... good night.